Greetings, Earthlings. My name is Aaron Ellis. I'm a guidance counselor at Jefferson Elementary School. I've been here for 27 years. When I first started counseling, we went to a lot of different schools. I went to seven, matter of fact. In 1 week, I went to seven schools. But now through some progress and through some grants and things like that, we have another counselor here and also have a half day counselor who's here for 2.5 days out of the week. But I want to talk about something that is very important to me, and it's the point of being racism and also education, and look at how there has been problems. But in problem solving, you first got to find out what the problem is, where it originated from. So let's talk about racism first. Let me give you a definition of systemic racism. Refers to something that has been spread throughout, affecting a group, a system such as a body, economy, market, or society as a whole. And really, racism has affected our economy and our market and society as a whole. But I'm going to talk to you today about how that occurred. Slavery was a very profitable. So it was very profitable. It was a profitable. I guess I must less words just say a business, because in turn to own someone and not only own them, but you own their children. Any child that they had that came out of you having a relationship, they were owners of that child. And it was so profitable, it was profitable to the point of, let me give you some of those figures here, is that a slave could be sold, an 18-year-old slave was born saved was worth $650, an 18-year-old slave. And at today's amount, that's like $14,500 in today's economy. But that same slave, after 4 years, the price went up to $1,000, which in turn now is $21,000 in today's market. So having slaves was like having money in the bank. And the point of the things that they can do, and that continued to grow. It helped the United States, well, maybe we change that, it helped the South become a very profitable part of the United States. And that's where the war came in, because now Abraham Lincoln wanted to prohibit slavery. But they went into a war. They succeeded from the United States and started a war that they didn't want to. They started talking about their rights. Really, their rights to own another human being. That was their right, to own another human being. That was supposedly why they were fighting, but nobody said anything about the money that they were making, and how it fluctuated and worked in the world economy. Because the four major products of slavery are still functioning and money makers today. Think about that. The four major products of slavery are still making money today. That's rice, cotton, sugar, and tobacco. Think about it. All those still make money today. Every product that you buy in the store or in the can has some sugar in it. And most of your clothing has a little bit of cotton in it. More so now they're going into artificial things like polyester and things like that. But originally cotton was everything, and tobacco speaks for itself. That's that old money is still fluctuating and still working. But to understand that, we need to understand, like, look at the West Virginia, state of West Virginia. People don't realize the importance that West Virginia had in the Civil War. West Virginia is the only state that has succeeded from another state during the Civil War. What it is, the eastern part of Virginia was slave, and the western part, they were bought. In 1863, Lincoln made West Virginia a state. And right here in Parkersburg, where I live at, there was a fort called Fort Borman. And what it is up on a hill, And what it did was it was overlooking the Little Kanawha Ohio River. So in turn, the Union could send down not just troops, but they could send down supplies down that river. So that was a very strategic point to have. And so in turn, that was where Parkersburg came into play as far as being an important state in the Union. And like I said, it's the only state that ever succeeded during the Civil War was West Virginia. But as we go along now, we look more into why the war was fought, and then once it was stopped, once the war was over, what happened? There was no transition. And and see how that still affects today. Because anytime two businesses get together and they have a transition period, to whereas they're looking at how we could bring these two businesses together and how they could be successful in working together for the common goal of making more money. But they didn't have the transition. And so what it is, you take a group of people and so-called free them and put them into society. Now, Lincoln idea, and this would be more than you heard of people talk about reparation, blacks, we want reparation. Well, in turn, at one time, they did have some, I would think you would call that. It was called 40 acres and a mule. Lincoln wanted to give, or was giving, each slave 40 acres and a mule, because the mules came from the military, which they used them for as packing, carrying materials and things like that. That loads of, but so really, basically, they were giving the slaves some land and a tractor back then. The tractor back then was a mule. So they had a mule and 40 acres. But then when the new president came on, the assassination, a new president came, President Johnson, he took that back. So now there's no reparation. So now you took a group of people that all they knew was working for their plantation owners. That's all they knew. Now, they had a lot of skills, don't get me wrong. They had a lot of skills, but they had nothing else going for them, really. And the thing of it is, things never changed, even though there was no more slavery on paper, but there was still discrimination and separation. I'll give you, for example, the war was over in 1865. Okay, but in 1862, blacks were allowed to enlist in the service, but they enlisted in segregated parts. So they weren't really with the white soldiers. They were a separate thing. I think most of the time they were cleanup duty and things like that, cooks and things like that. Yeah. So they never integrated them. They didn't integrate blacks until in our military to 1863. No, excuse me, not 1863. 1948. Sorry, 1948, which in turn made it 88 years. So it took them 88 years. So if we were free, if slaves were free, if blacks were free, then how come they still separated the military? And it wasn't just in the military, it was all through a facet of life. Brown versus the Board of Education, 1953. Like I said, the war was over in 1865, but they did not see fit to let blacks go to school with white children for almost 90 years. But they were free. And see, as I'm talking about these dates and the years, I want you to think about the mental ramification that goes along with that, the conditioning. So then how could I look at you as an equal when you couldn't even be in the same military I was in? You couldn't even go to the same school. I tell my students all the time, as I stand in front of them, I say, you think about this. I've only been able to come and be working in schools of people of my color since 1953. So how could you look at blacks as an equal? And then really, We can go into things like with the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Blacks were still using, white were not allowed to use the same water fountain and the bathrooms, facilities, public facilities. So here it is, you have colored water fountain and a black water fountain in one of the supposedly the greatest country in the world, and you were still separating things like going to the bathroom. What I do is I show my students, I draw I told me here's the street, I draw a pipe line coming from the street. Down here I put a T-joint. And if this water goes to the left, this one goes to the right. Now, when it comes up into the building, they have one little porcelain bowl, and this says colored. Then over here, it has a stand and, flowers, maybe a picture on the wall, and it says white. And I asked my students, is the water different? They're shaking their head and they're looking, trying to figure out what's going on. They say, "Oh, Mr. Ellis, the water's dirty." I say, "No, think about it. It's the same water. The only thing that separates the water is this T-joint down here that sends some to the right and some to the left." And my purpose of this is trying to show them that there is no basis, no rationale for racism. And because we never really placed or said anything about that, we just continued to condition it. We kept passing that along. Because, think about this. We're talking about the lady, Miss Katherine Johnson. This was in West Virginia, White Sulphur Springs. Her parents worked at the Greenbrier Hotel over there. And she went to West Virginia State College in Charleston, and she was the first black woman to be. She was the first black woman that was being able to go into the graduate program at the University of West Virginia. But here it is. This lady was developing programs to send an astronaut into outer space, John Glenn, into outer space. And she was not allowed to go to the bathroom in the hallway. She had to walk almost a mile to go to the bathroom and get back. Think about that. I am computing figures to send a man into space, a earthling, an American into space. But in your eyes, I can't go to the same bathroom that you're going to. Do you realize that? And they wonder why we still have problems. You just don't let things like that just go away. And I'm not saying that blacks should hold a grudge, but we need to realize, what happened, what was going on. So I'm trying to get my students to realize that racism has no rational belief unless you really look at what it was. Economics. Strictly economics. You saw a way of controlling a certain population, because what I looked at, slaves down, or blacks were coming to America quite some time. And this is my own philosophy, this is my own idea, but they came as indentured servants, like everybody else. We had a lot of indentured servants coming in from Europe. The only thing about being an indentured servant, some of those guys would come, or women would come in here. They had their curly hair and their beards and their accent. So what it is, they could run away. They could run away, cut their hair, cut their beard, lose that accent, change their name, because they had those German names. They changed to something to sound more English, American. They could leave and hide. Now they got their here in America, but now they can get away. They can run away and start afresh. But somebody decided that if we made the slaves, he made the blacks slaves, we can have this indentured servant for life, and they can't run away. Think about that. They couldn't run away because if right now, if I would go somewhere and stand in a group of people that has a little bit less pigmentation than I have, white, you could walk down. I could be down with 100 people. You can't label or take what has so many Catholics, as so many Protestants, whatever. But you look down and say, hey, there's one black person down there. So the blacks could not run away. So they were ideal for them to use as slaves. And then you had to learn how to control them. Now, there's been some fallacies that I don't know if many of you ever heard of this called the lynch letter. Now, they're saying this lynch letter is not truthful, but what it was, this guy's last name was Lynch. Think about where he got that, what evolved from his name, lynching. But anyway, he supposedly wrote this article to give to slave owners. He said, if you turn the light-skinned blacks against the dark-skinned blacks, you turn the old against the young, and then you'll keep them. That's how you control your slave. Because see, if you take a slave and cut his leg off because he ran away, or mutilated, cut his fingers and hands off, whatever, you mutilated them or killed them by lynching, you're destroying your own property. So you had to look at a way that you can keep your property. And that conditioning has went down through our livelihoods, our lifetime. Because I had, after I talked to some, when I was in graduate school, I talked to some elderly black people. And one guy was saying that it was about the brown bag. I'm sure a lot of you never heard about the brown bag theory. But what it is that blacks were conscious of, that light-skinned blacks were better. So there's always in the black society, there's always been a conflict between dark-skinned and light-skinned blacks. And what it is that they would put that brown bag to you. If you were darker than that brown bag, they didn't want you dating their daughters because they wanted to keep that light skin keep going. And where did the light skin come from? Think about that. Where did the light skin come from? The light skin came from the interracial dating between blacks and whites, or really back at the time might not have been so much as interracial dating. It was rape, going down to, at the end of the day, the master would go down to the slave quarters and have sex with the slaves, anyone that he wanted to. So in turn, once that baby came, in turn he was owner of the baby, but not so much as taking responsibility as being a father. And then see, that goes into another part that I want to talk about, is that about the loving, anybody ever heard of the loving versus loving? Well, loving versus the state of Virginia. What just happened in that this man, and it was a black lady, or she was half Indian and Mexican, or some background. I think it was Indian. And what it was, they wanted to get married. It was the white construction worker. They wanted to get married. But in the state of Virginia, blacks weren't allowed to marry. Now think about this. Blacks weren't allowed to marry whites. So think about this. As long as you snuck around and maybe had sex, casual sex or whatever you want to call it, that was okay. But if you married, you broke the law. So then in turn, that probably out of the only 9 states in the union didn't have any kind of laws like that, but the rest of the states had a law that blacks couldn't marry whites, or whites couldn't marry blacks. So what it is, this family, in 63, they had to go to Virginia to get married. not Virginia, excuse me, go to D.C., but they were from Virginia. You could get married in D.C. So they went to D.C. and they came back. 2 o'clock in the morning one night, sheriff comes in and arrests them. Their crime, loving each other and marrying each other. That was their crime. So here it is, you put someone in jail because they fell in love and wanted to start a family. They did not riot. They did not attack anybody. They didn't shoot anybody. They didn't do anything like that. All they did was love each other and marry. You think about this. This is the way our system was developed and was still going on. So what it is, when they brought them to court, they told them they could have went to jail for a couple of years, but they said, if you leave Virginia and go back to D.C. or wherever it is, you're allowed to do that, and stay away for 25 years, we'll let you go. So can you imagine that? So here it is, that people that when blacks wanted to get together and whites wanted to get together, there was laws against that happening. I want to go back to the hidden figures. The lady there is that about education. There was a law against teaching blacks. You would be, if you were a white person and you taught a black person how to read or write, they would take you out and whip you. They may even possibly imprison you for teaching someone. So this is this great big country that we have. This is this country that has all this worldwide, knowledge and all this capabilities economically, but you still had laws that required people, colors mixing as far as education, marriage, drinking water, and things like that. So and when I'm teaching my students these things, I'm trying to get them to understand the importance of working together. And that's why I start calling them earthlings, because in turn, by us being earthlings, you can realize that, hey, we all live on the planet Earth. We all do. I don't care what country you come from. I don't care what your religion is, what you believe in. You live on the planet Earth. And everybody on the planet Earth has 6 basic human needs. And this is also me. I get my students, I can teach them about the planet because those 6 basic human needs are food, water, oxygen, shelter, sleep, and love. Everybody needs food, but what it is, I have a picture of the planet of the world. I point to it. I said, well, if we went to the Congo in the continent of Africa, and by the way, let me add a little point there. Think about that. When you think about there, you don't say about what country a person comes from. They're even called African Americans. So maybe whites should be called European Americans because they all came from Europe. But no, you separate their country from Spain or Germany. There, you don't call them European Americans. You call them Italians. You call them Germans. But if you come from the continent of Africa, they just say Africa. I remember a lady came and spoke to us at Jefferson, and she said, yeah, we're selling this product in Africa too. I say, well, what country? She couldn't tell me what country. She just said they were selling it in Africa because we just combined it, and there's 54 countries in the continent of Africa. But we tend not to separate or distinguish that. We just judge and all in together. But let's get back to our basic human needs. So when I say, okay, everybody eats food, we point to, I have a little pointer where I point here and say, this is, or China or Congo or Australia. What food do they eat there? Do they eat the same food as you? Probably not. They might eat some. way things going now. I haven't been abroad, but they say they got McDonald's and KFC and just in other countries and things like that. But most of all, I get them to look at the different foods that they eat. They like a lot of places. We're kind of a meat and potato kind of a place here, but especially in the South or other countries, their rice is a staple for them. Rice. Also, eat, maybe eating kangaroo in Australia. Down being down in Central America, maybe you're eating some iguana or something like that. But the point is, they're eating food. It might not be the same food you're eating, but it is food. So we have to understand that. So I'm not only teaching them to respect other people, but I'm teaching them about the planet, teaching them about this world, about what goes on in all the other countries. So in turn, everybody eats food because sometimes I tease them and say, "Oh yeah, I eat rattlesnake and things like that," and they say, "Ooh," they're hollering. Ooh. But the thing is, I'm just trying to get to understand them. Say, "Hey, is rattlesnake food?" Yes, if you cook it properly, I imagine it is. But the thing of it is, so we don't down somebody for what they eat. We look at that similarities of that they're eating. See, and that's where my separation comes in because I don't believe in diversity. I believe in similarities. We're more similar than we're different. We have to understand that we have those same basic things now. Like I'll tell our students, if I went to school one day and I put a cowboy hat on, had my white bandana, and I would have some cowboy boots and listen to some good old country music, maybe a little tobacco in my corner of my mouth and spitting or stuff or whatever. What would you call me? They say, "Oh, redneck." Okay. The next day when I go to school, I I sag my pants down my rear end. Yeah, I got a big chain around my neck. I'm listening to rap music. So then in turn, you're a gangster, you're a G, or hip hop. Or if I come the next day, I have my little pencil pack, the pencil holder, and have my white shirt buttoned all up to here, and my little penny loafers on. Then you start calling me names like nerd. But the thing of it is, I'm showing them that you could change that outside exterior, but you are still a human being. And we all need those 6 basic human needs. If we just focus on that when we're working with a person, then we could problem solve a lot easier and better by respecting theirs. So then we go to the other need about water. Do you drink water? Yes, everybody should drink water. We drink a little more than what we're doing. I think as a country we should drink a little bit more. But the most important thing is that we all drink water. But also water, those basic human needs also is based on where do you live at. Because if you lived in Flint, Michigan, from the news that I've been reading, I wouldn't be drinking no water from the tap. So basically, we're buying water. We're water bottles, but in some country they have a well. Some country they're going down to the river and dipping some of that water out of there, and maybe having to boil it, things like that for impurities. But because I've read with a lot of not a lot, but I've heard some athletes or movie stars that went over to different countries in the continent of Africa and started wells, helped them build wells, gave money for them to be able to dig wells and things like that for them. So we all need water, and our water is different where we go. But also too, we realize that the water is also polluted, can be polluted by. Think about who's polluting the water. Who gives you the right to destroy a basic human need that we all need on this planet so you can make money with your business? Then that's the next one we go into with air. I'm from Pittsburgh, a small town 18 miles south of Pittsburgh. They had steel mills there. So in turn at the steel mill, we every day you smell that sulfur and you can see big clouds of smoke coming up there. Who gave them the right to destroy our air, a basic human need? Money, economy. But that's taking something that we all need. Now, some countries or even some states don't have that. So then in turn, they don't have the manufacturing, so their air is a little bit different. Here in Florida, when I was there, I lived in a place, Clewiston, Florida, where what they did was the first product, the first part of sugar cane and refining sugar is the sugar cane that grows. They burn the field down. That starts that initial process of sugar refining. So in turn, all through you can tell when cane season was up because then there'd be smoke all over the town because and they're polluting the air so they can make one of those four basic groups here is sugar that are still doing well economically. So in turn, but is it air? Do we still need air? Yes. Does everybody on the planet need air? If we take a breath right now, are they breathing in Australia? Are they breathing in Iceland? Are they breathing in Mexico? Yes. We all need air. So like I said, I'm showing the children about the world, but I'm also showing them about industries and things like that that are affecting the world as well. Okay, so then the next one is shelter. We all need shelter, right? To keep us up, cover us from the elements outside. So in turn, in having a cover for the elements, but our clothes is a part of shelter, but we also have houses and apartments and trailers and things like that. But so is my shelter is different than your shelter? Are you better than me? As I asked the children, some people might be living in other countries, might be living in a grass hut. So is your shelter better? Some places they might be taking animal dung and they use that for fire or something, or in the north and the Eskimos, Alaska, things like that, they're using ice for their shelter. Or here in Parkersburg, maybe somebody is homeless and their shelter is a cardboard box or under the bridge. Are they still a human being like you? They might not have the same shelter as you, but they do have a shelter, the best they can do at that time. So are we still the same? Are we still earthlings? Are we still as one? And then the next one is sleep. We all need to sleep. If you don't get enough rest, if you don't get enough sleep, then in turn, how are you going to function? Also young children need a lot more sleep, and I think that's kind of happening now that from video games, staying up all night on video games and trying to get kids to come in and work on their iPad to get their homework done. Since we're more into visual learning, I think that's creating a problem too there because they're tired and sleepy because they've been up all night playing video games. But I also teach them that your body grows when it's at rest. So you need to get enough rest so that your body will be able to grow. Basic human need. And the last one is love. If a child cannot develop properly without love, and in turn someone taking care of them, because as a baby, when you're hungry, you can't say, let me get my cell phone out. You're in the crib, let me get my cell phone out and call down Mickey D's and have them DoorDash me a couple Big Macs. No, you have to have someone that will come in and take care of you and make sure you have your basic human needs taken care of. You're breathing, you have food and things like that. But you need that love. And that's what comes in as far as about the education, too, is loving and taking care of you and making sure that you're getting a good education so you can take care of yourself. Because now, the data shows that more people are coming back home to live with their parents. When a bird pushes the little birds out the nest for them to fly. That's for them to fly off and soar and get their own nest. They don't let them fly out, and 3 or 4 years later, 5 years later, they come back with a husband or a wife and a couple other chicks with them to stay back in your nest. So it's important for we to understand about how education comes in about that love too. And because everybody can learn. Everybody has the ability to learn. And what I show them is that, okay, if you read something for a half, if you read this 10 pages, it takes you a half an hour reading, and you can understand everything now. I have to read it an hour and a half, 2 hours for me to understand it. You know, I realize how much time I have to put into it in order for me to be successful. I can't read a half an hour like you and say, oh, I got it. Or I can't say, did you read it? Yes. Did you understand it? No, but I read the words, but I didn't understand what I was reading. So it's important for it. So that's what gets back down to those basic human needs as far as teaching people how to problem solve. Because now, if you have a problem, how you resolve that problem. About 10, 15 years or 20 years ago was really, everybody was caught up into the peer mediation. We want to have these peer mediation. We were able to get us paid for the teachers, and we was taking kids over different places. I would take our children here at our school over to the church, and we'd take 10 to 15 kids and teach them these mediation skills. But then I started thinking, I'm saying, they all could use these skills. They all could use these mediation skills, how to resolve conflict. And it ain't just conflict on the playground, it's conflict in the classroom. So what I did was I started teaching all the kids from pre-K to 5th grade conflict resolution skills, because you need to know how to resolve conflict. This conflict is all around us. You have a brain, I have a brain. How do we resolve that conflict of my idea and your idea to make it a win-win? I can't win all the time and you lose. I feel happy and you're depressed. You win all the time and I lose, then I'm depressed, kind of like slavery. But win-win. How can we put these two ideas together and develop a win-win situation? And out of that, I developed I started saying we attack problems, not people. We don't attack people. You can't solve any conflict by hitting or name calling. Another word for it is we get a war. We don't resolve many things by war. We just take control now and do what we want with you because we beat you in war. But if you are really trying to resolve conflict, you want to look at how you can make this better for both sides, not just one side, both sides. Win-win. You win and I win. But it comes down to a point of being responsible. I can't tell you what you need to do in order to be better. And you can't tell me what to do in order to be better. I mean, you can, and we do those things, but that doesn't resolve the conflict. It just keeps it going. So what it is, we have to no hitting, no name calling, and being honest. You can't resolve the problem if you're not honest. That is a very important part of problem solving, is being honest. And clearly, all through our history, we have not been honest with each other, which in turn why we still have the same issues and the same problem, because we're not honest. You can't solve any problem without being honest. So I teach the kids that, you can't have things your way all the time. Nobody say, is anybody perfect? Everybody say, no, Mr. O's nobody. Everybody's not perfect. Well, then why do you try to have your way all the time? If you're fighting and whining and crying, trying to have your way all the time, you're trying to do something that's not possible, and that's be perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. When you make that mistake, you make that mistake, and the most important thing is to learn from that mistake that you made and continue. continue to grow from there. So in turn, and the thing of it is, you have to listen to each other. We don't do a good job at listening. When somebody starts to talk or explain, oh no, it didn't happen that way. Oh, it did. No, you listen to what they have to say. Everybody has opinion. Everybody has feelings. You listen to what they have to say, and then once they finish, you say, "Are you finished? Let me explain to you what I felt was going on." So now we have both sides listening and expressing themselves in a positive and a productive way. No hitting, no name calling, no fighting, no lying. And now we look at, what can I do to make this better, that I have control over? Then the other person say, well, what can I do to make this better, that I have control over? And if each side looks at what they can do to resolve the problem, then you can resolve the problem. Most of the time when I have mediation, it got to the point whereas the teacher would send me students. Once we got past the line and being honest, no more name calling, we can solve the problem very quickly. Looking at what you can do. But then again, in turn, we need to be aware of our body and our feelings, because our body tells us everything. Our body tells us when we're hungry, when we're sleepy, when we're upset. Because think about this. I try to explain to our students, your body tells you when you're getting mad. No, they'll say, oh, I don't like when my brother hits me. No, not what someone does to you. When is your body will say, I'm getting mad. You tighten your fists up, you clench your teeth, your heart start beating real fast. You might perspire. But the point, you need to be aware of and address and listen to your body, because your body is telling you when you're getting upset. And once you realize that and understand that and you stop, now you can make a better choice. Or that choice might be you need to go away somewhere, calm down, relax, do some exercise, something. You know what you need to do in order to calm yourself down. Think about what you did, and you come back and try to resolve that. Because the jails are full of people that got upset. Instead of calming down, they exploded and hurt somebody or hurt themselves. So it's important to be a problem solver in the classroom as well. You don't understand what's going on. I don't know how many times I've talked to students and the teachers sit there and they're like amazed. I'm saying that. How many of you have ever sat in class, did not have a clue what the teacher was talking about, but you sat there and smiled and say, I don't know what this lady's talking about, but I sure hope she don't call on me. That happens. So then I asked them, who are you? Are you being honest to yourself? Are you lying to yourself? Who are you lying to? They're saying, we're lying to the teacher. Yeah, you're lying to the teacher, but the main person that you're lying to is yourself, because you're pretending that you know something that you don't have a clue about. And nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. If you're trying to do something positive, if you're trying to do something different, you're going to make mistakes. Understand that, but don't give up. Don't attack yourself. Attack the problem, not the person. If you're sitting there calling yourself stupid and I'm dumb, which in turn we do, or you start cutting yourself, you start doing things to yourself instead of addressing the problem, attacking the problem, not the person. Because like I said, that person is you sometimes. You're attacking yourself. And the last part is you got to work hard. You got to put some effort into it. It's not going to just happen overnight. You have to put effort into what you're doing in order to be successful. Tell them that you might dream of being successful. Now you have to wake up and put the hard work in to make that happen. But you can do it, because realize that we as counselors in our profession is that At first, they don't think that what we do affects academics. It's always, we're always put on the side. That's why they didn't hire counselors. Like I said, when I first started here in 1993, I went to 7 schools on a 5-day work week. So that means I was a half a day in some schools. So if I talked to a student about an issue, I couldn't resolve that or like have any backup or follow up the next day because I'm at another school getting some more issues. It kind of basically it's like putting fires out. What we do affects the education. Now I've been here long enough. Well, not long enough. We wrote a grant and we got some other people hired. Another counselor hired and we have another lady that comes in 2.5 days. We can have more people to address that situation. We can follow up because what we do, if a student is emotionally down, sad, afraid, there's all these different things that keeps us from learning. We could be afraid of trying new things. We could be sad about something at home, and all this comes down to trauma. So we have to learn how to resolve that in a positive way so we can get to the key thing of learning. If counseling and education would work closer together, we would be a lot more successful, especially in these low-income schools. We would be a lot more successful because sometimes we have people come in and have low expectations on these students. We can't do that, so you're kind of putting people in a shell, in a bowl where you come from here, and so we don't expect you to do this, or you're this color, we don't expect you to do that, or you're a girl, really, and that's another ism that really, really bothers me because think about Miss Johnson as far as in that, or she was working at Nassau, no other women there. It wasn't just no black women wasn't there, it was no women there. And women just got the right to vote in the 20s. And really, domestic violence laws didn't come into play until there was a big notoriety about O.J. Simpson. You got this movie star or a football player or whatever. So then they start realizing that, hey, this is a problem in America. So then they start changing laws. Because when I was younger, I can remember people saying about when they come in, they would ask the officer, why were you bothering him? Come on, let me take him out here for a while and calm down. You leave him alone. He didn't just beat your brains out. He's telling you to leave him alone. He's 6'5", 290 pounds, and you're 5'2", but you're intimidating him enough to start hitting you. And they're telling you to leave him alone. And he just beat you because you didn't have his dinner when he wanted or what he wanted. Or he's frustrated about something on his job, so he's taking out you. So is that problem solving? Or are you attacking the problem? Or are you attacking people? So that's why I try to teach our students to be problem solvers. And if academic, because we're Title I school, so we have Title I math, and we have Title I reading. I've been talking about let's have Title I counseling. The point of it is that they need to learn social skills because they come from a traumatic background, people that had no social skills, people that did attack the person rather than the problem. Because when I have a 15-year-old son, when he was 3 years old, we were in the kitchen and I dropped something on the floor and I said, oh man, and I bent over and started cleaning it up, 3 days later, he dropped something. You know what he said? Oh man, he dealt with that emotional situation the same way he observed me dealing with it. So if you come into a home where somebody drops something, they start kicking the cat, punching the walls, things like that there, what do you think that child is going to do? That's the big thing about trauma. It's hard, it's bad that those things happen to the child or they saw that or they experienced that, but it teaches them how to deal with emotional situations. That's why it's important for us to be able to redirect that, reteach, teach and like they're saying in math and reading, teach and reteach. We got to teach and reteach social skills. Once they learn those social skills, to be able to go to the teacher and say, "Excuse me, I don't understand. Could you please help me?" Wow, this teacher's going to have a great big smile on their face, and they're going to go out of their way to try to help you, and become a better student, to understand the subject. But also, too, now you're learning how to get along with other people. You have a problem with someone that's black or something, you don't start calling them names, or don't want to start fighting. What is the problem? What is the problem? And that's what I said when I was saying about the mediation. I would ask them, let's find out what the problem. Because a lot of times we're addressing things that aren't really. We're putting all this energy into things that aren't the problem. The also too, holding a grudge. And I think that's really a bad situation in our society, is we hold grudges. And when I teach about grudges, I tell the student, okay, I would go get my backpack, and I'm gonna go fill it up with garbage. I'm gonna get the funkiest garbage I can find, and I'm gonna throw it on these purple people that I can't stand. They're no good. They're lazy. They're shiftless. I just can't stand them, and I'm gonna throw this garbage on them. But 2 weeks go by, I don't see any purple people. But it's been 90 degrees outside. So it's 90 degrees, it's hot, and this garbage is starting to stink. And who's carrying that garbage around? Me. And I say, who's stinking? Me. Because now when I come over to your house to visit, I'm still angry at them purple people, so I liable to hit you. Because I'm mad, I'm gonna hit these purple people, and I'm holding this in so other people. That's why, so that's when I would do. I take the backpack and I walk over to, can I come over to your house with this garbage? No, Miss Dells, you're stinking, right? And so we have to learn to let things go, learn from it. But when you forgive somebody, you're not only forgiving them, but you're forgiving yourself. Not to hold that in, so you're doing that for yourself, so you can move forward. Learn from it. Maybe it might be somebody who learned I can't be around that person, or I shouldn't be communicating with that person. But you learn from it, but you don't hold a grudge. In our school too, I see a lot of single families, and they're mad at the dad or they're mad at the mom. And the parents have taught them to be mad at the parents. So if you got a child running around here mad at other people, then in turn, in order to be, you're holding that in. How can we get that education in there? You got to let that go. Look at what you can do for yourself so you can be a better person. And that comes down to problem solving. Learn how to resolve conflict. You will have conflict all the time in your life. And the sooner you learn how to resolve that, as soon as that light bulb comes on and you learn how to resolve conflict, because the more that light bulb of learning comes on for you, the brighter your future will be. And that's my whole goal, is teaching our students. The more you learn to resolve conflict, not hold grudges, to attack problems, just attack problems, not people. And learn, be always open to learn new things. And you can see, your body will tell you, a teacher can tell you, they can look at you and tell you when you learn something new. They can see that your face brightens up. You can see that in your eyes that they just learned something new. The more that light bulb of learning comes on for you, the brighter your future will be. Well, I'd like to thank you for give me a chance to express myself. And I'm looking forward to be able to talk to anybody. I'm always willing to learn and discuss these things, because, like I said, the more the light bulb comes on for me, the more brighter my future will be, and I can express and pass this on to other people, to other earthlings. So goodbye, earthlings, and thank you for listening.